What's up, YouTube? I'm here to do my prediction video for UFC Fight Night Barboza versus Gaethje. Let's start at the bottom. The first fight is Alex Perez versus Mark De La Rosa. Both these guys are good wrestler boxers. I think that Alex Perez is just the stronger wrestler. I think that when they're boxing, it'll probably be pretty close. But like I said, I think Alex is just the stronger wrestler, and we're going to see that in this fight. It's at 35, so I think both these guys will look a little bit better than they did at flyweight. I thought they were both a tiny bit small for flyweight, but like I said, I think it'll be back and forth, but I just think every time they clinch up, we're just going to see Alex be stronger in the wrestling and just edge out every round and win a 30-27 decision. Next, we got Mayan Morse versus something Moza. I can't say her first name. And Moza looks like a good striker, but that's about it. I think Morris is much more well-rounded, and I think on the ground especially, she's got a huge advantage. I think it's going to be one of those women fights where once we see this go to the ground, we're just going to see one of these chicks dominate the crap out of the other. And that's what I see happening. I think Morris gets us to the ground and wins by submission in like the first round. Next, we got Ray Borg versus Casey Kennedy. And Casey Kennedy does look like a decent fighter, but he's taking this fight like a week's notice. And Ray Borg is moving up to 35 as well. I think the flyweight division's done. I just want to throw that out there. I think that all these dudes are abandoning it, and they're all moving up to 35 because, you know what I mean? Both those dudes are in the top 10 at flyweight, and they're moving up to 35. Just saying. I think that Ray Borg will look better at 35. I think he had a hard time making 25. You know, he's a little bit small, which is probably his one fear, but I think his wrestling will make up for that. And I think he's going to get this to the ground, beat up Casey, and eventually win by rear naked choke, probably in the first or second round. I think Borg's just way too strong on the ground. Next is Kevin Holland versus Jared Muskrat, and this is tough. I think striking, Kevin's stronger, but I think on the ground, I give the advantage to Gerald. I think physically, Kevin's stronger, but I think overall technique, Gerald's better everywhere, except for the striking. I think Kevin's a little bit better there. It's really tough because I also think Kevin's got a speed advantage, but I think Gerald's got the power advantage. So it's a real coin flip. It's kind of just, do you go with the youth and speed, or do you go with the experience and technique? I'm really divided. I'm leaning towards Gerald. I just think if it hits the ground, he has a better chance of catching Kevin in submission. But this is a super close fight. But yeah, I'm going to go with Gerald. I think he wins by submission. I think this hits the ground. I think when it does, he catches him in like an armbar or something like that. Next is Enrique Barzola versus Kevin Aguilar. And I feel so bad for Enrique Barzola because he has that one bullshit decision loss. And I feel like because of that, the UFC will just like never give him a top 15 guy until he wins like 6 in a row. He's on like a 4 or 5 fight win streak, and he's like 6 or 7 and 1 in the UFC overall. And in my opinion, he's never lost, and he's dominated every single fight he's been in. His wrestling is just so strong. I don't think that Kevin Aguilar will be able to stop him from taking him down. Kevin Aguilar is definitely the better striker, but I just think in terms of speed and overall wrestling, Barzola is just much better. I don't think Barzola is going to have any real trouble until he fights a top 15 guy, and I feel like that's what's going to happen in this fight. Kevin, you know, might be able to get back up, but I think Barzola's conditioning is just amazing. He's like the 45-pound version of, you know, those guys at 70 right now, the Colby Covingtons and the Usmans, you know, that new type of wrestling where they're able to just get that body lock on guys and consistently drag them to the ground for 15 straight minutes. No one's been able to figure out how to beat that kind of wrestling yet, and what's his face at lightweight is also like that, Gregor Gillespie, and you know what I mean? These dudes, this next wave of wrestlers are just amazing. Guys can't get away from them. So I got Barzola winning by decision, 30-27. Next we got Ross Pearson versus Desmond Green, and this is kind of just a volume thing. I think whoever can land more strikes will win. I don't think this fight's going to hit the ground. And, I mean, Desmond Green just doesn't have a lot of knockout power, and I think Ross Pearson is just going to out-volume him. You know, Ross Pearson hasn't looked amazing as of late, but like I said, I think that Desmond Green just does not have a high output, and his conditioning isn't amazing. I think Ross Pearson, you know, might lose the first round, but I think as this fight goes on, we're going to see him land more. And like I said, he has a good, consistent pace for all 3 rounds, and Desmond Green has always been kind of this low volume, just straight from the outside. And Ross Pearson, to me, is too high-level a striker to just get picked apart from the outside like that, and I think he's just going to edge out a decision. It might be close, but I think Ross Pearson wins at least a split decision. Next is Maya Rodriguez versus Jessica Aguilar, and Rodriguez looks like a decent striker, but I think Jessica Aguilar just got a huge advantage on the ground. I think that, you know, unless Jessica Aguilar is completely done, which she could be, she's been in a lot of wars and she's getting up there, I think if she can get this to the ground, she'll win by rear naked choke or something like that, and that's just what I see happening. I think Jessica gets this fight to the ground eventually and wins by submission. Next, we got Shaman Morse versus, I can't say his first name, but Youssef, and this is basically two great strikers going up against each other, and I feel like Morris does not get the respect he deserves. I feel like, he's lost twice to two great, guys at featherweight, fucking Marlon Moraes at 35, and then the Russian dude, Zabit. And it's like, he's lost to two amazing grapplers, and he's won every other fight, and his last two fights, he fought two really good strikers and outstruck them for 2 out of the 3 rounds. And I think that's just going to happen in this fight. I think he's a much better striker than a lot of people give him credit for. And I think Youssef, just because he's coming out the Contender Series, people think he's great. And, he looks good, but I just feel like Morris is the better striker. He looks like he's fought better dudes, and he's looked amazing against them. And I think this is going to be the same thing. I think he's just a better striker, and he's going to win at least 2 of the 3 rounds, just like his last 2 fights. Next, we got Paul Craig versus Kennedy. Can't say his last name. Kennedy, I think, is probably going to win this fight. This is basically 100% striker versus grappler. Paul Craig, if he can get this to the ground, he'll win. Kennedy, if he keeps on the feet, will knock him out. The one thing I have against Kennedy is he looks tentative when he strikes, which is really weird because he's basically just a striker. I think that if he's just more confident on the feet, which will probably happen over time, then he's going to be a machine later. I don't know what his wrestling is like because he hasn't really fought any great wrestlers, but like I said, Paul Craig, if he can get this to the ground, he's going to win. I think he's just got a massive advantage there, but I just don't see it happening. I think Kennedy's just too physically strong. I think he keeps on the feet and wins by knockout or decision, but I got Kennedy. Next, we got Karolina Kowalkiewicz versus Michelle Waterson, and this is tough because I think on the feet, Karolina's a little bit better of a striker, but I think if Michelle can get this to the ground, she's got a massive advantage there. And to me, Karolina hasn't looked super impressive since that fight with Joanna. I think a lot of the fights she's had, whether she's won or lost, just hasn't looked as good as when she was making a run to the title. As for Michelle Waterson's starting to look really good. She's won like 2 or 3 in a row, all against good people, and she's getting consistently better at getting fights to the ground. And I think if that happens, she's going to win by rear naked choke. And this is what I see happening. I think Michelle Waterson eventually drags this to the ground and wins by rear naked choke. Next, we got Josh Emmett versus Michael Johnson, and this fight is really tough because Josh Emmett was in like an accident or something like that, and he was out for like a year, and he almost retired, so I have no idea what he's going to look like. I would pick him easily if that hadn't happened, and I honestly wonder what he's going to look like coming into this fight. Because before this, I felt like he was probably the better striker and wrestler overall, and he would just outpace Michael Johnson. And that still might happen. He could be completely fine, but it just worries me too much. I think that him basically saying, I can't remember what it was, whether it was a car crash or just an injury in the gym, but he basically said he almost retired because of an injury, and because of that, I think it's probably pretty severe, and I just have to lean towards Michael Johnson. He's been fighting more regularly, and he doesn't have this massive injury. I think that, like I said, striking and wrestling, Josh Emmett's probably technically a little bit better, but I still think Michael Johnson's got a speed advantage, and like I said, activity is going to help him. And I think if he keeps us on the feet, he could outpoint Josh Emmett for 3 rounds, so I'm going to lean towards Johnson. I say he wins a split decision, a close one. Next, we got David Branch versus Jack Hermanson, and this one's tough just because Dave Branch, I think, is the better guy, but because of his age, we've seen that he's having a harder time keeping a high pace. And I think that's just an age thing because he's almost 40. It's tough because both these guys are like striker wrestlers with jiu-jitsu, but I'm going to go with Branch. Like I said, they have the exact same, they're good at the exact same thing. I just think Branch is better everywhere. It's just a conditioning thing. I think Jack Hermanson can outpace him if he can push him against the fence and grind him out, but I think Dave Branch eventually either hits him with a big shot or takes him down and wins by submission, so I'm leaning towards David Branch. Finally, we have Edson Barboza versus Justin Gaethje, and to me, this fight 100% depends on what both these guys do, in the sense that if Gaethje isn't going to wrestle with him, then he needs to be super aggressive, because we've seen before with Barboza, if you play that kicking game with him in the beginning, then he can just, he's not using as much energy as when you're making him back up. And we saw that when he fought Dan Hooker. Dan Hooker was playing the kicking game with him that whole first round, and he got beat up a lot, and then he tried forcing his way in the second and won the second round, but he had taken too much damage at that point. And then Barboza finished him in the third. I think that's what, you know, Justin Gaethje, whether he decides to wrestle or not, needs to be aggressive, because if he just plays that kicking game with Barboza, Barboza's going to eat him up for the first round and a half, and it'll be too late. You have to start attacking him right away. I do think he should use his wrestling, and he said he would. I think that if he does that, he will be able to beat up Barboza a lot more. Barboza obviously has a speed advantage, so if he can keep the outside pace, he should be able to win this. I just think Justin Gaethje's got too much advantage in the wrestling and with the pace moving forward. Like, Barboza's always had trouble with that, and I think that's what's going to happen. I think this fight will be back and forth like every Gaethje fight up until Gaethje finishes him. And like I said, I just think the forward pressure of Gaethje is going to be the biggest factor in this fight, and I think that's what he always does that, and I think that's just going to favor him. I think unless he gets caught in like the first round, I think he wins by like a third or fourth round finish. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Please like and subscribe.